White House as well today, following the second deadly shooting by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. It took place over the weekend. As you can see on Bloomberg TV and on YouTube, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, just began her briefing at the White House in what is a room full, even with the weather here shutting down the federal government. It does appear we have some mixed messages coming from the administration. Caroline Leavitt saying a short time ago, quote, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state policy from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals, encouraged agitators to stalk, record, and confront federal officials, creating dangerous situations. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. She says they've used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators, and saying this only an hour roughly after President Trump went to Truth Social to describe a phone call he had today with Governor Tim Walz. He writes on social media, Governor Walz called me with a request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, the president says, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. That does not sound like what we're hearing from the press secretary as we attempt to rationalize these two lines of thinking, knowing as well that it is expected the government could be facing a partial shutdown by the end of this week because of not only Democrat but Republican pushback on what took place over the weekend. The fact is you need 60 votes in the Senate, and getting a DHS bill, which is, by the way, combined with other spending bills in a minibus, is not going to reach that threshold as Chuck Schumer demands the bills be split apart and DHS be addressed on its own. It's where we start our conversation with our political panel. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis are with us. Jeannie is our Democratic analyst and democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Rick is a partner at Stone Court Capital, our Republican strategist. Jeannie, have Democrats decided to shut down half the government on Friday?
Yeah, I think it's very clear from what Schumer and all Democrats that we've heard from so far have said is that they hope that the Republicans split this, take out the one bill with the DHS in it, pass the others, and then negotiate or work on what is going to go forward in terms of DHS, because they simply cannot now fund this thing. They are hearing from their constituents. It is loud and clear. People were in, for many millions of people in this country this weekend, watching these horrific videos out of Minneapolis. And I think if anybody thought there was unification on the part of Democrats over healthcare to shut down, this is something I don't think we've seen in a long time. They are widely unified. They've got some Republicans who may come over. So I think we are looking for a partial shutdown, unless, of course, John Thune decides that he's going to that there's a deal to be had here and that they break this thing apart and work on revamping DHS.
Well, for starters, I'm just struck to both of you by just the extreme nature in which the entire political landscape changed between Friday and a Monday. It is incredible the impact that this second shooting has had over the funding debate. Rick, you spent a lot of time in the Senate. Is it realistic for Chuck Schumer to talk about pulling all of these spending bills apart? Because even if they do, the House isn't here. They'd have to come back. They won't be around likely till next week, and the government shuts down anyway, right?
Yeah, obviously his focus is on the Department of Homeland Security, ripping that out of the minibus. And I think he's got plenty of support within a Democratic caucus to do it. It's kind of a gift handed to him by the Republican administration saying, hey, we're right about to have a opportunity to finally get this budget done without a shutdown. And we're going to create a scene in Minneapolis that'll be so extreme that even you can't say yes to the deal you've already said yes to. So, yeah, this is a problem. And the administration, has created this problem for itself. Even Republicans aren't prepared to walk the plank for DHS. You can count on two hands Republican senators who have said we need a immediate investigation, state and local people involved, that we're trampling on the rights of core values of the American citizens' right to protest. There's very little support right now, even on the Republican side, for not doing something dramatic to sort of give a message to DHS that we can't have these kinds of things happening anymore. So, even though Republicans aren't prepared to vote against it, they need Democrats in the Senate to pass this omnibus, and they're not going to get it. So yeah, the next worst thing is Republicans are going to be in the House on leave while this is going on and aren't going to stop and come back right away to try and fund the government. They're going to go ahead and finish out the week, let the government expire, and then get around to it later on. So American public is not going to feel well served this week.
And it's only been a couple of weeks since the last shutdown, Jeannie. How quickly we forget. You know, I had to chuckle. The tip sheets all pointing out the fact that it is not news when Tom Tillis or Lisa Murkowski push back on the president. But some of the other names that we've been seeing, Bill Cassidy is suddenly the poster child. Not that he's very happy with Donald Trump as being primaried by the president, but the Republican from Louisiana writes on social media, the events in Minneapolis are incredibly disturbing. The credibility of ICE and DHS are at stake. There must be a full joint federal and state investigation. He was echoed by Andrew Garbarino in the House, Jeannie. This is the chair of the Homeland Security Committee who was on with us last week, asking for the heads of ICE, Customs, and Border Protection to testify before his committee. You've even got James Comer suggesting ICE leave Minnesota. We'll look back on this, I guess, as a turning point, Jeannie, but I'm not sure what we're turning to. Do you?
That's right. And I was just going to mention James Comer went on Fox News. And if you look at the more conservative media, I'm just looking at the New York Post here where I am, and they have a headline now saying Trump snubs Kristi Noem, who they call Iced Barbie. And their point is, of course, along with a big story on Comer on Fox News, that there is, you know, if you look from the Washington Examiner and some of these other more conservative outlets, they are reporting on these people who are calling the administration to task. And what's so baffling is to hear the press secretary right now in the room with reporters blaming Democrats not more than an hour after the president took to Truth Social and tried to walk this thing back. And this has been a theme with this administration. They simply cannot get out of their own way. They had a big victory here with closing down the border on an issue that got them the White House, and yet they have done everything they can at this point to disrupt that. And Republicans in Congress are not going to want the plank for the administration on this. So a very difficult time for the president. And by the way, none of this was hard. We're really sorry this happened. Let's have an investigation. Let's work with local officials. These are things that are said all the time. And yet instead they went on the air this weekend calling victims, suspects, calling them assassins and terrorists. I mean, it's utterly inexplicable from a messaging standpoint or from any common sense standpoint for this administration.
Well, I'm compelled by the business side of this, Rick Davis. We can talk about outrage among politicians all day long here, and there'll be more where that came from. But it's not every day you see a letter like this. 60 chief executive officers from Minnesota-based companies calling on the president to de-escalate tensions between state, local, and federal authorities, knowing that, of course, we have a real standoff here on a government level. We're talking about Best Buy, Target, Cargill, General Mills, United Health. We're also talking about sports teams. The Minnesota Vikings and Timberwolves are on here. This was shared by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Is this what's moving the president, Rick Davis?
You know, I think all these things are starting to maybe get his attention. You know, you can't avoid the impact that all of this is having on the people in Minnesota, and the impact economically to the community. I mean, the city and state are shut down, and that was the intent. The administration makes no bones about it. They're going to go to these quote sanctuary cities, and they're going to root out these illegals who are supposedly causing all this trouble in the community. Except in these communities, there wasn't that much trouble, and the federal officers who are there are creating so much disruption that it's impeding the flow of commerce. It's keeping people, at home, away from their schools and their churches. It's just phenomenal, the impact on these communities, and so the administration is getting what they asked for. I think someone needs to actually start talking to Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff. Is the first one to call Preddy a terrorist And in any other administration, there would be people from his own party calling for his head today. But in this administration, they throw so much out there that you don't know which atrocity to react to.
30 seconds, Jeannie. Representative Robin Kelly, a Democrat, of course, has articles of impeachment for Kristi Noem. 120 Democrats have signed on. Is that going anywhere?
I don't know if the impeachment is going to go anywhere, but Donald Trump looks like he is about to take action potentially. I mean, just the movement of Tom Homan up there. And Tom Homan and Kristi Noem and Lewandowski have been at odds for a while. So I think he knows how bad this is.
Jeannie reminds us Tom Homan is making tracks directed by the president to Minneapolis. Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, thank you both so much. Great analysis at a very difficult moment. This is